The Pastor's Heart and Dominic Steele, and How to Talk About Jesus with Sam Chan. And look, our goal on The Pastor's Heart is to encourage pastors, particularly senior pastors, in our work of building up the saints and seeking the lost. And look, thank you for the waves of positive feedback and interaction that we've been getting from you, from all around the world, actually. And even yesterday, a senior pastor in London speaking of how helpful he's been finding our program. If you would like to help us get the word out, we'd appreciate that. You could like us on Facebook, follow us on YouTube, or you can subscribe to, and we'll send you an email every time we put out an episode. You go to thepastorsheart.net, and that would be terrific. Today, we're talking to the whole church, actually, about personal evangelism. Sam Chan is my guest. He's an evangelist with the City Bible Forum here in Sydney, and a new book that Sam has out. It's called How to Talk About Jesus Without Being That Guy. And Sam, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
I have so much praise for this book, and a couple of things I want to workshop with you a little. The structure is 8 helpful hints. Before we get into the detail of the book, the pastor's heart and your heart, and what's God been doing on your heart in this season? Yeah.
I think COVID's just forced me to take a compulsory sabbath, just restock, recalibrate as to what's important in life. I think, my spending is less, and suddenly I realised I actually don't have to own as much stuff as I used to think I did. We didn't go away for family holidays as much, but suddenly I thought, well, hang on, we are family at home. So suddenly life got decluttered and a lot more simple, and suddenly I realised I'm actually very happy with a very simple, decluttered life.
Now, 8 tips for talking about Jesus. We'll do the first one. Evangelism is a lifestyle change. You speak of plausibility structures, of evangelism not so much being solo but community. What do you mean by that?
We believe what we believe, mainly because that's what people that we know, love and trust also believe. And an easy example is we all believe women have the right to vote. But 100 years ago, we didn't. We all believe motorcyclists should wear a helmet when they ride a motorbike. But in Texas, USA, they don't believe that. And so somehow our beliefs, our behaviours are very much the product of what our community also has. So what our trusted friends and family also believe, we tend to believe. Another example is when my wife and I tried to name our second child, we thought we don't want a common name, but we named him Cooper. And that year, Cooper was a top 10 name in New South Wales. And suddenly we realised, hey, we just do what people around us tend to do. So right now, with our friends, when we try to tell them about Jesus, what we say is true. Christ is risen from the dead, whether we like it or not, whether we believe it or not. But if we're the one and only bozo friend in their life, in their community that believes in Jesus, what we say is very unbelievable. But if our friends have many Christian friends who also believe in the Jesus story, then suddenly what we say becomes way more plausible, way more believable. And maybe the problem with evangelism is we've always gone out solo. Okay, this time I'm going to do it. I'm going to tell my friends about Jesus. Maybe I'm going to sign up for a book club, a cooking club, a football team, and I'm going to tell the room about Jesus.
Yeah, as I was reading that chapter, I was thinking to myself, I've just had some work done on our house by a tradesman. He's actually spent like 2 weeks at our house, and so I've been trying to win him to Jesus in that conversation. And I realised, as I was talking to him, he just has the picture of the church as this old-fashioned institution and crazy. And so I decided we had some work that needed to be done down here at church, and so I got him to come and do that work. And so therefore he got to meet our whole staff team, and by getting into the little community of spending a day or two here, things started to become more plausible. And I realised, I've been living your chapter this last moment. Yeah.
Oh, that's so great to hear. Yeah, he entered a community of believers, and he thought, hang on, many people believe this. And as I pointed out, Paul in 1 Corinthians 15 said, hey, I saw Christ risen from the dead. Oh, hang on, not just me, the other apostles, not just them, but 500 other people that you know, love and trust, they saw Christ risen from the dead. So it's way more believable at that moment.
Now, I want to pick up on an argument that came in this first chapter that you had picked up from Rico Tice. And he was talking about moving from a Christianized community to moving to defeat a belief, apologetic kind of evangelism, to something like he calls they don't know. Can you there's some implications of this, but can you just explain that argument first?
Yeah, so Rico Tice explains it this way. There are three phases of evangelism in recent Western Christianity. The first phase is the Billy Graham phase, where Billy comes, preaches a 20-minute Bible talk, and he's basically telling people to believe what they've heard 100 times before. Then we went to the second phase of evangelism, what we call the defeater beliefs phase, where people know what we want them to believe, but they can't because of all these defeater beliefs like, I can't trust the Bible, the problem of science, the problem of other religions. So we have to remove the defeater beliefs from them, and then they will believe. But now we're in the final and third phase, which is where our friends are on a different planet. They don't even know what we believe. So the defeater beliefs aren't there. And deep down, they don't care what we believe, and they suspect what we believe is evil, wrong, and we're the bad guys in their storyline.
And so we've moved to?
An era where we now need to promote belief. We need to even get them to care what we believe. Like, hey, come check out what Jesus says about this. And intuitively, I've noticed most of us have discovered this for ourselves. So our church, usually at the start of the year, tries to run a whole month where we can invite our friends to hear a series of talks aimed at our non-believing friends. And 5 or 10 years ago, it was all defeated beliefs. Like, how can you trust the Bible? What about the problem of evil? How can a loving God send someone to hell? And a lot of my friends from other churches were doing the same thing. But we've all discovered a phase where we've just got people to even want to know what we say. So we're doing a series on what would Jesus say. Other people doing series of talks on, why you will, where do we get the idea of human rights, freedom, dignity, all
and they're
comes from
positive
the gospel.
concepts.
Yeah, so we're promoting belief. Maybe one way of looking at it is Tim Keller, he had the reason for God, so that's the defeater beliefs phase. But now we've got the making sense of God phase, where we're not trying to promote belief. Like, come, just you want to believe this.
Now, when I read that, it made me think of a recent discussion that I've been involved with, and I actually rang you up about it a couple of weeks ago because I wanted to get your opinion on it. A campaign, one of the big organisations here in Australia came up with a campaign, Jesus, History's Biggest Hoax, and I rang them and said, I think this is the wrong way to go because I'm for putting the gospel positively, not putting the gospel negatively. And my argument was, you don't advertise, does Coke taste bad in cans? A negative thing that I hadn't thought about that. But this argument that you've put is arguing against the campaign for a slightly different reason. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I was actually just talking yesterday to my boss, Mark Leong, at City Bible Forum about this. It's almost like people on a journey to belief. So it starts off broad like a funnel and gets narrower and narrower and narrower. So once upon a time, the defeater belief phase was actually quite a long way down the funnel or the journey towards belief. But now we're over here. They don't even know.
And wrongly over there.
Yeah, that's right. They don't even know what we believe to have the defeater beliefs. So we're here trying to get them to even just begin the journey. Like, come into the funnel with us.
So what's the strategy for getting... I mean, you don't want to have a social media campaign on the defeater belief. What's the strategy you want to put up instead?
Oh, there's so many strategies. But one is to show, and I'm getting this from Mark Sayers, This Cultural Moment, where we're showing people you're actually enjoying the fruits, the blessings of the kingdom, but you don't have the king who gives you this kingdom. So there's so many fruits that Western secular society presumes to be true and enjoys, which only Christianity can give them. The whole idea of human rights, human dignity, freedom, even a loving God. Hey, this comes from the gospel. This comes from Jesus. You believe this already. Come and just find out why you believe this and where it comes from.
And resonating on some of those things that I think intuitively must be true, but I'm not quite sure why.
Yeah.
Okay. Next chapter, you talk about go to their things and they'll come to your things. And you start off with an illustration on AC/DC's The Highway to Hell.
That's right.
It's extraordinarily depressing, that song, isn't it? You were struck by it at an Australia Day barbecue. I remember it at halftime in a Billy Joel concert and just thinking, 25,000 people singing Highway to Hell, and most of you are going there, and it's just overwhelming, really.
Well, it struck me because it was on Australia Day that I was in a crowd of people all singing this as basically the unofficial de facto national Australian anthem. And it struck me, it was very appropriate because it summed up the Australian larrikin spirit, you know, the underdog basically sticking to the man, anti-authority. Also, it's our origin story. We were sent by the Brits here as convicts basically to die. So we may as well party and have a good time on the way. But it also struck me that the field is ripe for harvest. You know, what would Jesus see if he saw this? He would see not a threat to the gospel, but an opportunity for the gospel. The harvest is plenty right now.
Now, I want to drill down in chapter 5, and really this is where you get to the heart of the gospel issues and tell a better story. And you've moved from the how do I get an audience to what I'm actually going to say. And the illustration or the argument that you put, and I've been reminded that you did actually argue this in Evangelism in a Skeptical World, although I'd forgotten. But the two different stories, the Asian conversion story and the Western deconversion story, remind me of that.
Yeah, so I think I'm allowed to say this because I'm an Asian. But the first thing you notice when you go to an Australian university is there are Asians everywhere. There are more Asians here than Asia. And then you go to a Christian group on campus and you think, it's only Asians here. I'm the only white person in here. What's going on? And it's because the Asian conversion story is a story of liberation and freedom. It goes like this. I used to believe in evil spirits, darkness, fears, superstition, and endless need for status and success and to climb the security ladder. But either my parents found Jesus or I found Jesus and I've been set free from that. And I see my Asian friends who still haven't found Jesus yet, and I feel sorry for them because they live in fear, darkness, superstition. They're trapped. I wish they could find Jesus.
And so for them, freedom comes in the gospel.
Yeah, and it's a better story than the one they already had without Jesus. But for the typical Western white Anglo-Australian, their deconversion story goes like this. I used to believe in Jesus, or my parents used to believe in Jesus. I used to go to church. I used to get sent to Sunday school. I used to have to obey authority figures. I used to have to listen to outdated views on sex and morality. But I stopped believing in Jesus. And now I can do whatever I want to do. I can do whatever it takes to be happy. And when I see my friends who still believe in Jesus, I feel sorry for them. They're trapped.
So for the Asian, you're saying the gospel brings freedom, and you're saying the Westerner has the conception that the gospel takes away freedom.
Take away their freedom.
Now, that can't be true.
Well, obviously, it can't be true. It's not true, but that's their perception.
That's their perception.
Yeah.
So how do we push back on that, or should we bother to push back on that? Is it impossible to push back on that? Or
I think we've just too willingly taken that as the story that they're allowed to tell themselves. So now we can retell the story. So no, hang on, we are the better story, because Julianne Laird, who used to do campus ministry at AFES in Melbourne, I said to her, how's campus ministry going right now? She says, the last few years have been amazing. I said, why? What's going on? She said, we've had so many people become Christians recently. And I joked and said, were they Asians? Because it doesn't count if they're Asian. She goes, no, these were white people. And I jokingly said, oh, okay, so real converts, what's going on? And she said...
Just for the record, that was Sam who said that, not me.
And she said, it's purpose. They turn up on campus and they have no purpose. They turn up with unprecedented freedoms. Suddenly they're free from their parents, they're free from teachers telling them what to do, but they don't know what they're free for. So they're just as trapped and lost. But if they can discover Jesus, they discover the designer, they discover their design, they find fulfillment and purpose and meaning and hope. So it's the better story.
That sounds like an attractive evangelism campaign you could run on social media.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. In this chapter, I thought that was terrific. You then they go on to talk about a jargon-free message and a better story. Mikey Lynch gave you a bit of a tickle on this. Why don't I just read the little paragraph that he had a difficulty with in his review, and get you to respond to that. He says, I mean, you talk about a jargon-free gospel message. Here's one of my go-to explanations of the gospel for my non-Christian friends. There's more to life than what we see and touch. We're more than just atoms and molecules. We're more than just another species of life on this planet. We're more than just a blip in the timeline of the universe. We're more than the sum of our parts. You're part of something bigger. And that paragraph actually resonates with something that you were just saying before. It kind of is the same kind of argument. There's a purpose. There's a more than story. And you go on, but what is it exactly? It's this. There's a God who loves us, made us, and saved us. Saved's a new word. Mm-hmm. And now we get to the part of his story. Every day is a day where I live for Jesus because he lives for me. Every day is a day where I can journey with Jesus and bring his love, mercy, and justice to this planet. If this is true, then we're set free from our empty and self-absorbed lives. We're set free to admit that everything's not okay right now. The person you see on the outside is not the person on the inside. I'm not the person I pretend to be, but that's okay because Jesus is perfect, so I don't have to pretend to be perfect anymore. Jesus' Spirit lives in me right now, and he loves me just the way I am. Jesus loves me too much to leave me the way I am. Every day is a day when he makes me more and more into the person he wants me to be. Every day is a day where I can become my full potential, not through my plan for myself, but through God's plan for me. Every day is a day where I can be everything that God has made me to be. Now, Mikey's critique, he's written, there's something I found so frustrating. I was almost yelling at the book, the way you yell at the TV, the strangely muted place the atonement plays in the book. And he cites that as his example. Was he right or wrong? What were your thoughts there?
I love Mikey Lynch, and he's a very smart man. So when I stumbled upon that review, I thought, oh my gosh, he must be right. Guilty, 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 because I trust Mike's judgment over mine. But then I thought, no, hang on. Just 1 or 2 pages later, I had my gospel summary as manger cross king. God sent us his son Jesus as a human, one of us. He dies on a cross to take away our sin, guilt, and shame in our place, a substitute atonement. But then one day again, he's going to come again, set up his kingdom here on earth, and we can be part of that kingdom. So it's all God, what God has done. We got incarnation, atonement, and regeneration all there. And I thought, okay, what he's done is he's stumbled across my jargon-free gospel message in isolation without that, where I've actually teased out the significance of the God story. And I just picture myself, because this is what usually happens. When you meet a non-believing friend and you tell them the gospel, it means God sent us his son Jesus, and they say, yeah, but what does that mean? Jesus dies on a cross for you in your place. Yeah, but what does that mean? One day Jesus is going to come again. Yeah, what does that mean? Well, then the jargon-free message is what that means. There's a God who loves you, he made you, he saves you. Jesus is perfect, so you don't have to be perfect. You can be part of Team Jesus, where you now have a mission, a purpose, a hope, a destiny in life. So actually in that jargon-free message, because I used to teach theology, it's actually justification, sanctification, regeneration and reconciliation, even adoption, all snuck in there, but without using those words, but using the language of the people today in the 21st century, what a university student might use or talk about.
You may have just gone too fast for me.
Oh, sorry.
I can't see sin here. I can't see in both. I mean, if I was Mikey, this is what he might be saying to you. Sam, I can't in the manger cross king on the cross. He says, now we can say something about how Jesus died for us in our place. If we believe this, then God will wash away our guilt and shame. Now, sin is assumed, but it's not. It's not said. And similarly in the illustrative story, saved. I mean, saved does assume something, but it's not said. And as I was reflecting, I find when I'm writing an evangelistic talk or when I'm in personal conversation, actually articulating sin is the hardest thing for me to do. Do you know, of all the bits, that's the bit I find most difficult. So I was looking for the bit where you do describe sin and model for me how to describe sin in this contemporary age. So have a go.
Yeah, so I try to look at what Jesus does. So I mentioned this in the book. Jesus somehow, more often than not, can talk about sin without using the actual word sin.
And I'm all for that. I used the word autonomy, but you've got a better... What do you say?
So like to the rich young ruler, Jesus says, why don't you sell everything you have? Come follow me. And at that moment, he doesn't use the word sin, but he's actually telling the man, you've got a problem with money. It's your idol. You've replaced God with your idol. To the people who won't let the children come to Jesus, Jesus says, unless you become one of these, you can't enter the kingdom of God. Meaning maybe your problem is pride, self-righteousness, self-justification. To the woman at the well, you keep drinking this water, you're going to stay thirsty, and, tell me about your married life. So somehow he can sneak sin in without using the word sin. And so I'm getting there that, okay, we're not the person we say we are on the outside. Jesus is perfect, so I don't have to pretend to be perfect. So there's this whole idea that we fall short of the standard that we set for ourselves, let alone God sets for us. The whole we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Even, Jesus dies on the cross in our place. And I think that's just enough to make someone who's never heard this before, hang on, what does that mean? Like, why does someone have to die on the cross in my place? So I think they're just enough little pebbles there. They sneak in someone's shoe. So even God loves you, He made you, He saves you. See, the biggest anathema right now in the 21st century Western world is that we need to be rescued. But you just snuck it in there. I like the idea that a God loved me, who made me, but hang on, why does He have to save me? Well, it's because He loves you.
So you want to use the word rescued.
Yeah.
You want to use the word redeemed, or you want...
Redeem's a wonderful word. The trouble is Hollywood and sports documentaries use redemption all the time, which the meaning's changed now. This is the redemption story. Meaning, we lost last year's grand final, but we can redeem ourselves this year. And I thought, well, no, that's a very works-based redemption story, which is the opposite of what the Bible... I just think, I would love to use redeem and redemption. It's just, I think, the secular world has changed its meaning too much.
I don't think it's the word I'd use if I was writing my gospel outline from scratch. But because I was preaching on Colossians last week, it was there in the passage, and so I did it then. Yeah.
I love to deconstruct the Western storyline, because the Western storyline is, I'm okay, and you need to accept me the way I am. So I'm definitely not sinful, and I don't need saving. That's the implication. But even secular writers like Will Storr, UK author, who wrote the book Selfie, How the West Became So Self-Obsessed, said just this storyline itself has led to a disproportionate amount of stress, anxiety, and depression. And that's where we can say, well, hang on, the gospel is the opposite story, where we can say, I'm not okay. I'm not the person you think I am. And Jesus accepts me for who I am. So again, this whole idea, maybe I'm sinful, I fall short, and I need to be rescued. And that's the gospel story. So it becomes good news once we deconstruct just how the Western secular storyline is actually a culture of perfectionism and insecurity at the same time, where I have to pretend I'm okay.
And I think we were just talking about this at lunch. You do get to the issues of repentance. Well, not even repentance, but you do get to the issue of atonement when you get to the cross. Although that chapter would have been perhaps... That criticism may not have been there if the order had been different. Now...
I could just sneak this in.
Yeah.
So often when I speak at school chapel services, I come in with saying, I actually introduce myself as saying, I once went to the Sydney Cricket Ground and you do the whole Mexican wave thing and the members don't do it, so everyone boos them. And then one day someone invited me to be a member and the Mexican wave went around and we all sit there and the members think, what do we do when it comes to us? And when it came to us, none of us moved and suddenly 40,000 boo us. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've become that guy, the one they boo. I said, that's how I feel right now, being the bozo in your school chapel service, having to tell you the Jesus story, because now I'm the one being booed. But spare a thought, one day you're going to be here like me. And then I say, we all know the Jesus story, don't we? And then in that moment of almost parody, I sneak it in. And we all know the Jesus story. God sent us His Son, Jesus, so that's manger. Jesus dies on a cross for us in our place, so that's cross and atonement. He rose from the dead. We can be part of his kingdom, his team, his family. And so that's the regeneration, the rebirth thing. And then we've all heard the Jesus story. But hang on. Now I'm going to tell you why we need the Jesus story. And that's when I go into the significance, the jargon-free bit, because that means I don't have to pretend to be okay. That means I value worth and dignity. That means I can be part of a mission to bring Jesus, justice, mercy, and love here on this earth. So it's teasing out the truth, the gospel truth, and its meaning, and the relevance and the significance for you right now in 21st century Australia, who thought you had the better storyline. Well, listen, this is the better storyline.
I like that. In Mikey's review, he has a final quibble, which was Sam pitches the book as a book for the ordinary everyday Christian, for those who aren't the professional evangelist, and opens up the question of is every Christian an evangelist? And I actually went the opposite way to Mikey at that point. I thought it was fantastic that you were just assumed from the start that we were all involved in the game of evangelism. And I had it at the breakfast table this morning, your book, and my son said, that book, it's hard to get at the moment. And I thought, I want my sons to read this book, yeah. Tell me, though, about professional evangelist, everyday evangelist. Is evangelism the task of every person?
And I think this is how evangelism has changed. So 10, 20, maybe 30 years ago, the Billy Graham phase, it really was event-based evangelism, get a really gifted speaker, like a Dominic Steele to turn up to your event and be brave, invite your friends to come and hear. But now we realise the event-based gifted speaker type evangelism was way down the journey. It was way down. Now we're actually needing everyday, normal Christians to be out here at the journey telling their friends about Jesus. It really is. We have to become the disciple makers now. So yes, there's a place for gifted professional evangelists speaking at events, but more often than not now, 99% of evangelism is just these one-on-one organic conversations between people and their friends and family.
The thing that I found most encouraging about this book is just hearing stories of you doing it, and you out talking to your friends, being on the roster of the soccer club or whatever it was, but just having the personal energy to be out there doing evangelism. And so I'm very grateful to you for the book, and I'm looking forward to reflecting further, and also the rest of my family reflecting further, and then us having conversations about it. So thank you very much for both coming in and sharing with us this afternoon, Sam.
Oh, thanks, Dominic. Thanks so much for having me.
My guest on The Pastor's Heart, Sam Chan, and the book is How to Talk About Jesus Without Being That Guy at the Sydney Cricket Ground. And we will put a link to how you can purchase this book in the show notes below on this program. Thanks for being with us. See you next week on The Pastor's Heart.